Hi there, so today I'm going to teach you how to tune drums. Now some of you are going to be thinking, I got to tune my drums, are you kidding me? Well, there's a couple of variables that once you understand the basics of it, the science behind it, you'll find that you'll be able to play around with your drums and try and tune them yourself. On this drum, we've got two heads, okay? That's how it sounds right now. But we've got two notes being played there, right? We've got this top drum, which is sounding like that. And we've got this bottom head, which is sounding like that. Now, the first thing you need to understand is that when we hit the drum, the air pushes through the drum and makes this move, and so we get both of those notes. So sometimes what you're going to find is that drummers like to tune the bottom head and the top head to the same pitch. And that way then, the two heads move together and we just get one note, right? Some drummers, like me, like to tune the bottom head higher than the top. So then we get this kind of bwah, bwah kind of noise. And the reverse of that, the top head being tuned higher than the bottom head would get boom, boom. So already we're talking about options. Now these options, there's no right or wrong. So you've got to choose. Now, how do you actually learn to tune this drum then? Well, the good news is that there's things been brought out now. I like to use this little thing called a tune bot, which tells me in hertz what pitch is being portrayed, let's say, by this drum. So if I put this on here and I hit the middle of the drum to start with, just softly, I put a jumper underneath the bottom head so the bottom head's not making any noise, all right? So if I hit this softly, this is coming up here telling me 141 hertz. So in other words, the note that this is producing now is 141 hertz. Now, more important than the note that it's in producing is that this head here is even with itself. So what we have to do is we have to get each of these bolts here so they're evenly tuned, even amount of tension on each one. Now, if one's got more tension than the rest, then when you hit near that bolt, you'll get a higher pitched note than the other ones. Now, the first thing you're going to need is a drum key. In fact, if you buy a drum key, I would buy 10 of them because you're always going to lose these, and these are a real pain to find. So get yourself a few drum keys. So this drum at the moment, what I've done is I've gone around each of these lugs and I'm playing about an inch away from the edge, and I've just tapped and I've listened to the pitch and tried to make them the same. Now, because when I first started out drumming, a bit like some of you guys, I'm sure, I was like, they all sound the same to me, or they sound different. I have no idea if it's higher or lower. This thing helps me learn quite quickly what the difference between the high and the low. Another way that some people like to do it, if they've got a good ear, is they get an app on their phone and they use the hertz here, look, changing the hertz, and they just listen. So say they want to tune the drum to what we got here. Let's go a little higher so you can hear it. 161. They have that playing in their ear and they tap around and they see if they can make that match. Now for me, not a chance. So what I do is I tap each one of these, and that was 142. That one's 141. That one's 141. That one's 142. That one's 140. Now what you'll see sometimes when I tap it a couple of times in the same spot, it can change, and that's because with tuning drums, they're so finicky, right? If I go a little bit further than an inch from the edge, it changes the pitch. If I hit a little bit harder, it changes the pitch. If I buzz, it can change the pitch. So we've got to try and make it really consistent. Now that gives you an idea of why, when I say tune your drums, we've only got to be within a range. Everything's going to be perfect, because what will happen if I tighten this one here that was a little bit lower, this 140, what's going to happen is the head's going to stretch that way a little bit now, which might mean tightening these two as well. But at the moment, it's close enough. So you can see they're all around about 140 or 141. And I can hear that they're in tune. When a drum's perfectly in tune with itself, you'll be able to tap the top. And if you put your ear close to the drum, you'll hear that it'll just be going for a long time, okay? Now, how do you know what pitch to tune the drum to? Well, if I take this drum head and this top one, which is tuned all the way down, so they're all completely loose. Right, so no note at all. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to tighten them up with my fingers as tight as I can. Now I'm using fingers just because I can feel then when they start to get that grip, where it starts to just grip the head a little bit, and I'm going to turn it just a little bit past that. So they're all a similar tension, all right? Now they're not going to be perfect by any means, right? But they're going to be close. So they're all to the point now where they're not spinning anymore, right? Still no note. So the easiest thing for me to do now is to take my tuning key, and if I call that a half turn all the way around, then a quarter would be there, okay? So I take each one of these and I turn it by, say, a quarter turn. And I'm going to go opposites. You don't have to do that, but it makes it a little bit easier if we do that. So every single one now has gone up by a quarter of a turn. Now I'm starting to get a note. Right, it's a low note. And it's not perfect in tune, but at least there's a note. Now at this point here, some people will go, all right, that's tuned, that's done, right? Some people want to be real finicky about this and get them all the same, and some people want a much higher pitched drum than that. So what it sounds like now with both is this, really low. So I'm going to take each one another quarter. And you can see the drum now is a bit higher than it was before. We're around about 161. Now if the middle's 161, the edges will be a little bit higher normally. I'm going to even use my ear, and I'm just going to turn it the tiniest little amount higher. And then go, oh, I went the wrong way. So I'm going to go lower. Now the problem is then, it may be that doesn't want to come lower, that one wants to go higher. So then, again, I'm listening. So these are lower. So I'm going to bring that one a little bit higher, the opposite one a little bit higher, that one a little bit higher, and then the opposite one also a little bit higher. And you can see that it's finicky, isn't it, right? It's boring. So tuning the drum for the first time can take quite a while. Once you've tuned it once, you'll find that it's a lot quicker to do it the second, third, fourth time, right? So we're a lot closer now. Yeah, so now this drum is pretty much up at about 174. Now, if I want to drop back down then to the 137 that I've got written on here, which is how I normally tune this, I got to take all of them down. But because it's in tune now, it's a little bit quicker to do that. So if I drop it down now to 137, one 32, 134, 34, 33. So it's getting close, and you can see how finicky and a pain this is. I'm pretty close now. So that's a tiny bit low, and that should be okay. So now they're all coming in at 136 or 137. Oh, that one's a bit higher, 138, but I can live with that, right? Now the irony of all this is just about everything you could ever imagine changes the pitch of a drum. This is why I should have said tune in the drum, because outside, it's raining outside at the moment, right? So low pressure, sun comes out, high pressure, right? And these things change the pitch of your drum. Hitting it with a drumstick, well, that's obviously going to change because these are going to slowly come undone. The head itself will eventually sort of start to stretch a little bit. So all these things mean that tuning drums, as much as it is an art form, can sometimes be a bit over-exaggerated. So now that's back up to where I wanted it. So we're back where we started. And that's ringing forever, look. Now, I like the sound of that, right? You might not like the sound of it. So it might mean that you want to try and tune this a little bit higher because you want a high-pitched drum. It might mean that you want to change your bottom head to be the same pitch as the top, right? There's all these things we can do. However, there's one other thing that makes a massive difference. And that is products like Moon Gel. So Moon Gel is just a rubbery stuff. If it's just been Halloween here when I'm recording this. Halloween, you buy those things that you stick in the window. It's like a picture of a witch or something like that. Sticky stuff. Well, that's basically what this is. And if I put this on the drum, what it does is it stops the drum ringing so long. So instead of going down, it's going to go a little bit less. Now you can still hear a ring. Well, why is that? Well, because the bottom one is still ringing. So sometimes I'll put Moon Gels on the bottom. They sometimes fall off, so I'll sometimes put a piece of tape across that, which will make this sound. So not as long, look. And sometimes I'll put it on both. I'll put my thumb there instead for now. And you can see we start to get that instead of that, or it just fell off instead of this. Doesn't have to be Moon Gel. I've seen people use blue tack, gaffer tape. You're going to see on drums all the time. So for you, start to have a little play around with your drums. You can't really go wrong because guess what? You can just unscrew these all again and tighten them back up. The easiest way to start with is to get yourself something like a tune bot so you can use it as a reference, or get yourself a note on a keyboard, or find an app that's got hertz so you can hear what's going on and you can listen to that and kind of tap around. The other thing that you need to know as far as notes are concerned, if you think of a scale going like, The next note would be, now I'm not perfect pitch, right? But I'm talking about the interval wouldn't be, like really low, would it? There's steps that you can kind of feel, right? And so toms are often tuned in that way. So I might go high, middle, low, as opposed to high, middle, low. Do you know what I mean? And so when you're playing around with these ideas, just keep that in mind, right? Intervals are important. The biggest thing is having that head in tune with itself. Then you've got to think about, well, what about the relationship between the top head and the bottom head? And then finally, after all that consideration, you then got to choose what actual notes you're going to start with. Now, don't be too scared about this stuff, all right? I've been to gigs before where people have turned up with completely untuned, worst sounding drums you've ever heard in your life, and the sound engineer on the desk has made them sound amazing. So it hasn't got to be something you can do perfect every time. But since I've had this particularly, I find myself often now going into recording studios and getting compliments on how good the drums sound. Live gigs, how good the drums sound, all right? Snare is very similar. You've got a couple of variables to think about, because on a snare, some people like it a little bit tighter just so they can feel it a little bit tighter. And the bass drum is almost the opposite of that. Sometimes we really want a low noise, and some we want to make it really loose so we get a little bit of that kind of thud sound. The best thing to do is go check out your favourite drummers on YouTube, on live. Go and ask people at gigs if you can hear their drums. Do they tune their drums? How do they tune it? And just try and learn as much as you can. You're not going to learn it all in one go on one evening, but over weeks, months and years, you'll eventually be confident in your ability to tune the drums. There's a billion different drum heads that you can buy, all right? This is a coated one, which actually stops it ringing so much. There's 1-ply, which means it's one piece of plastic. 2-ply, 2 pieces of plastic. So there's so many variables, right? But just go, have a play with it, see if you can start to figure out what's happening when you're tightening it, when you're loosening it. See if you can start to get it so it's in tune with itself, and you'll soon be on your way to tuning your own drums.